Hello, everyone. Welcome to our experiment. This is, we'll say that over and over again, around virtual brainstorm. So this is something that we like to do in person at IDEO with friends like Simon, Ruben, and Bradley. But we've never tried this virtually. So this is going to be a bit of an experiment. So thank you for being our guinea pigs, but also being part of this community. So today we want to talk about personal tokens, social money. There's lots of different definitions, and we'll start to dig into that. But before I dive in, just want to give you a sense of how we think we're going to structure the time. We've got about an hour. Would love to introduce our special guests. We're going to share a little bit of inspiration about what we see happening in this space. And then we're going to dive into Figma and try to do a brainstorm together all at once. That may break, and if it does, we have a backup plan. So just bear with us. But first, I'd love to introduce you to Ruben, Simon, and Bradley, our special guests who all bring a unique perspective and are thought leaders in the personal token or social money space. And so thank you all for joining us. You'll get to hear from each of them in a few minutes. I'm going to share, these are the only slides we have. It's going to take 5 minutes, and then we'll jump into the brainstorm. So the first thing is, if you see at the bottom here, there's a tiny URL link /personal tokens. Tara has just posted it. Thank you. And that's the way into the Figma for the brainstorm. So you've probably seen this picture on Twitter if you're here, but thank you again to our guests and experts. We're excited to have this conversation. We've got a lot of expertise in the room and virtually in the webinar here. So excited to hear from everybody. For those of you who've not heard of IDEO or IDEO CoLab Ventures, just a really quick overview. We've been in the blockchain and distributed web space since 2015, and for individuals even beyond that. We started as an applied research lab that were building prototypes on top of the blockchain and Ethereum and other platforms. And since then, we've grown to build our network of startups, corporate partners, other VCs, et cetera. And so we have a venture fund, and we love to work with awesome projects that are trying to build real things that are going to help people. So really quickly, what do we mean by social tokens? I'll own, we've been calling it personal tokens or social tokens. I think that's one of the things actually that we want to discuss with the group is what is this? Actually, it's pretty new. And it's been bubbling up quite a bit over the last weeks and months. Thanks a lot to some of the folks on this panel. There's 3 themes that I read a bunch of the blogs and writings of our panelists, and there's 3 themes that I pulled out of what they've been talking about and what they've been doing. So one is, these tokens are a way to create personal equity, the ability to own and to have agency over your own work. And so there are cool examples that I'm sure we'll hear about of freelancers using personal tokens to engage with clients and get paid for their work. A second big theme is kind of money as memes. And so the value is the shared values of a community. And so kind of using a token or a community-based token as a social signaling value. And then Ruben wrote about this as well as Simon, the idea of gratitude tokens. So actually, can you create a unique and personal thank you using these tokens? And so those are kind of 3 interesting high-level themes that are part of this movement. And we'll dig much deeper into this in a second, but just wanted to set some context. So here's the moment of truth. We're pretty sure we're going to break Figma. This is, as I said, this is an experiment. I think Figma is designed for like 15 people max at any given time. So, and we have more than that, which is great. So please follow this link and get into the Figma. We'll give you a second, and then we'll start to chat with our panel and start the brainstorm. Should we switch it over to you now?
Sure. All right. So, hi everyone. Some of you are already in this thing. Again, it could break very well. People are trying to do some stuff to it. Please don't touch things. People are testing it. That's cool, but don't mess, please, with the general kind of like things that are already there. There is some logistics here. We have a live kind of Twitter conversation going. So if you go to our kind of Twitter page, you'll see kind of some questions here, asking about like who you are, tell us about yourself, and any questions that you might have. As we go through the session, we'll actually be opening up new sections in the Figma file for you to engage with. So just kind of remain in the Figma file and play along as we go through this. Thanks for experimenting.
Hey, I see Dana Martin's in there. Hello. All right, so again, the way we're going to structure this is we're going to start talking to our panelists for a few minutes to kind of set some inspiration, hear what's going on in the space, and then we'll then actually you'll get to play with the Figma and add your thoughts and contributions. So maybe first we can go around with our three panelists and hear how you touch this personal token or social money world. And since Bradley, you're here in the space with us, you get to go first.
Yeah, awesome. First, hey everyone on Figma. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here today and really talk about what's going on in this world. We really see this as one of the biggest plays in the decade, of the next decade, has sort of a near infinite amount of possibilities. You guys are sort of the early folks that will help sort of build the infrastructure for what this could be to the traditional web. So we think this is a massive onboarding tool as well. A little bit of background on me. So I was one of the founding researchers at CoinDesk, became an EIR at Techstars, and then founded Roll. So Roll is a protocol and web app that allows communities to mint, use, and distribute what we call their own social money. So these are branded ERC20 tokens, or you can call them personal tokens as well, whose specific case is really formed around the community. We really think the long-term value of this is going to be in the community. And so since we launched in August, we've had over 3,000 wallets sort of use and play around with social money. We've had over 60 issuers. So these are people or groups of people, some meetups in some cases, that have minted their own social money and created use cases. If you're an avid reader of The Defiant, you may have seen an article that came out earlier this week about Roll with Cami Russo, who minted Camis with us as well. Actually, if you guys DM me, the first 5 people that DM me, I'll send you 100 Cami right now, which is around 25 cents on Uniswap. And that's really the amazing thing. And it's not even the most amazing thing that's going on, okay? So we forked the Uniswap front end, which allowed us to, not ping a Hayden or someone else there and just kind of list some of the social money that people are actively using. And you'll almost see an emerging DeFi stack, right? Building on top of some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we have exchange.charl.com. You can imagine lending, coming pretty soon. So the idea of borrowing DAI against your social capital can become very real. Derivatives, going short and long. So all of this becomes possible in the next few years. I'd say one of the most interesting things that we're seeing, and I'd love to kind of talk to you guys more about, is the new forms of expression, behavior, and senses of belonging that are possible through social tokens. So things like, what does it mean to become a liquidity provider in someone's community, right? And you'll start to see this the same way you have sort of top commenters on a YouTube channel, or people that are receiving the most sort of karma on Reddit. As this emerges, 2022, 2023, those people will start to signify their sense of belonging uniquely through these new forms of meaning, really. So what does it mean to, so we have a significant digital artist population as well. What does it mean to sell your work in someone else's social money, we're seeing this as well. So there's some artists that have minted, and there's 20 other marketplaces on an OpenSea or wherever that have also elected to forego DAI, forego ETH, and really start playing around with someone else's money. You will see a ton of social staking apps. So the first thing we saw is, what does it mean to stake someone else's token to gain access to a community or a set of services or privileges? Let's say you're staking a Telegram channel, something like this. You'll see the birth of many social staking apps. I think that's a new field that's going to grow in the next few years. Those are just some of the things that we're seeing and excited about, and really just happy to be here and jam with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bradley. That's awesome. All right, so let's go to Ruben next. Just give us a sense of how you touch this world, and Ruben and Bradley shared some glimpses of the future that he sees, maybe a few of those from you as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. So, hi, I'm Ruben. I've been in the crypto space since about 2014, mainly as a lawyer and also as a product manager. I was at Coinbase from 2015 until last year. And now I work with a bunch of different projects in the space, and I get to do fun side projects like issuing personal tokens. So for me, my kind of introduction to this space was issuing my own personal token that's redeemable for 1 hour of my time as a consultant. And that was a super interesting experiment. It's still ongoing. I can definitely share some of the early learnings from that. But I think beyond that, as Bradley said, there's going to be a really interesting convergence of community and value and values and finance, right? So that's what we're kind of seeing and kind of seeding now with the personal token, social token revolution. I think like anything in crypto, the most exciting use cases are the emergent ones, the ones that happen organically, that aren't necessarily designed, by analog with existing systems. So that's what's super exciting to talk about today. So in terms of personal tokens, I think, frankly, the idea of redeeming 1 hour of someone's time for a token is, it's cool, but it's probably one of the more vanilla things that we're going to see in the space. I'm really excited by some of the other tokenized outputs of creators. I'm really excited by some of the things Simon's going to talk about in terms of gratitude tokens as well. But for me, I think an interesting, there's still a bunch of interesting value in personal tokens. So for me, actually creating the token was fascinating, thinking about who are the initial buyers and users of the token. And another thing that I always think about is how scalable is this model for people who want to, who have valuable output, but don't necessarily have the profile to kind of create and market their token from day one. So how can we extend this so it's something everyone can participate in and generate value for everyone that way?
Thanks, Ruben. Simon, how do you touch this world, and what are some of your glimpses of the future?
Cool. This is very exciting. About, when was it? At the end of 2013, when I first got into blockchain programming, I discovered Dogecoin for the first time, and it just blew my mind, merely for the fact that it had no technical innovation. Its innovation was the fact that it was money that purely represented a meme. And so this community just congregated around this coin that represented something for them, whether it's this joke or this caring attitude. And that, to me, as a thought experiment, just blew my mind. And so sort of I started putting the next steps, went more steps ahead and realized, could it be possible to build like any networks of value? Like any network, can we mint some money such that there's some latent or like existing capital that exists that we can make liquid, and through that empower people or give agency to people? And one of them was, well, if we can go from a community that's interested in a meme, why can't we go to people? And that's where my personal journey in personal tokens started, and is actually the primary driver to why I did a lot of stuff in the blockchain space in the past few years. It's why I helped co-design the ERC20 standard, because there was going to be many tokens, and the only way you could do it back then was start your own altcoin, and obviously that is not scalable. And that's why I did a lot of research and wrote a lot of articles on ideas around continuous token models. It's why I invented token bonding curves, and to give liquidity to immediate liquidity to a lot of these personal token ideas. And it's just exciting to see people driving forward with it again. My personal, some of my thinking on it has changed over the past few years. My current interest is primarily still what could we enable that is new behavior. I think it is novel, the fact that you can sell your time in units like this, say like for an hour of your work as Ruben does. But I think like extrapolating from here on out and say like what else could become possible. Because I think one of the biggest things that was a blocker in my head when thinking about personal tokens was, if we think of it like equity, it doesn't entirely work like equity, because equity in companies outlasts the people. But if a person passes away, then is it necessary for all the tokens to become worthless? And I don't necessarily think that now it would happen, but I think there's thought experiments that would allow it to go past it. That's why things like the money as a meme comes in, where even if someone passes away, the value of the meme would still be around. Or ideas around curation, like curating things surrounding a person's life, whether it's their attention or other things that they find valuable. And then lately, I've been thinking more on sort of reputation and gratitude tokens, primarily for the reason of sort of boosting the ability to boost certain signals that exist in the world, and through that capturing valuable capital. So yeah, I've been through a bunch of different stuff in this space in the past few years, and I feel like it still remains a very exciting space. And I do agree with the fact that I think what's most exciting is like once you have some fundamental layer, that we will start seeing a lot of emergent use cases, and especially where things like DeFi is now, the ability to just roll out things and immediately have access to things like derivatives, lending, all matter of interesting things is what's going to make this whole idea blow up. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Simon. So I think a few more questions just to set the scene for the rest of the group. As we think about what's possible, and you all shared a lot of nice glimpses of that. One thing to maybe establish across the group is kind of going to first principles. Like, what are the unique properties that are now available to us? Kind of like, what are the building blocks that we can start to play with as we explore possibilities, use cases, etc. So I think on the call, we probably have a mix of familiarity with kind of some of those building blocks, everywhere from hardcore crypto people to people who are curious and maybe coming from the design world or other places. So how would you, and this is for anybody, how would you describe the kind of fundamental building blocks that we can play with today?
Sure. So first thought is, the stack looks like the ERC20 token, right? The fundamental component of the token. Beyond that, another critical component is the liquidity pool. So right now, Uniswap is the best venue for that. And Uniswap is an amazing revelation, because you can create a market for anything, right? So having that liquid market from day one enables price discovery, enables trading, and that's another critical component of the stack as well. Right now, I think the bits that are missing, or that's still being really built out, is a lot of the tooling to help people issue and manage that liquidity, and then the redemption. So certainly Bradley and others are working on a lot of tools to make all that easier, and that's kind of the initial stack as I think of it.
So if I were to play that back, I'm hearing there's now the ability to create unique tokens for anybody. There's the ability to trade in and out of those tokens and have liquidity pools where there's supply and demand of those tokens and across different asset types. So the Joe token can be traded for any other token that's out there on Uniswap. And now we're starting to get kind of on-ramps and off-ramps between the token world and the fiat, the regular money world. I'm trying to use non-crypto language as best as I can. What are the other kind of fundamental properties? We talked a lot about behaviors, and I saw a question in the chat around kind of economics and behaviors. Like what token ERC20 has been around for a while. What are the other fundamental properties specifically of social money? I think we talked a lot about like value systems and things like that. What's unique about this social money space that we should be thinking about as we come up with use cases and ideas?
Well, I think fundamentally, like philosophically, what we're seeing. So I'll tell a story through the lens of someone that is helping a few hundred people get into crypto. That I met at VidCon in LA. So she's an Instagram influencer, and she's in the ASMR space. If you're not familiar with that, it's the people that are talking like this.
You gotta get right into the mic here.
Laurel is her name, and she goes by Sugar Boogers on Instagram if you want to follow her. Laurel has 500,000 followers, and fun fact, was the first person to mint a token on Roll. So Laurel minted Tingles. Laurel does not know too much about Ethereum or ERC20 or anything like this, but she's very smart. And she intuitively understands that she belongs to a platform that will inevitably compete with her. So we saw this in real time when Instagram sort of almost got rid of her currency, which was sort of likes or currency that she plays around with. Laurel has since started using Tingles every day. So she offers Tingles to people that increase her personal KPIs, let's say, so that share her content, that engage with her in different ways. And in return, Laurel gives additional access to her community. So Laurel does beauty videos as well. So for a few thousand Tingles, you could go to Roll and you could earn, so we just put Tingles on Uniswap. So it's about 25,000 Tingles for an ETH right now. So you can buy some Tingles, go to Roll, and spend some Tingles and get Laurel to either give you a shout out, choose from a few makeup videos she's doing, or choose a new ASMR video that makes me feel a certain way. So Laurel has around 400 to 500 Tingle holders, and these are people that are, I've talked to a few of them, they're global, and they are utilizing tools like, Ruben mentioned Uniswap and a few others, MetaMask, for the very first time. And this is near infinite. There's millions of Laurels. And if our thesis is correct, we could potentially onboard, a near infinite amount of communities. And I think what's missing, as we mentioned, is a set of tooling that we're trying to focus on, right? So the most important things that we've found are the most base things you need is a very, very simple way to distribute massive amounts of social money to a very, very, very wide audience. So we've created a simple way to do that. It's just a link you click. Anyway, you can send a link, you can send a message. We also have a product-based template, so you can sell questions, shout outs, blank user templates. You can kind of make it up as you go along. I think that's sort of the basic framework. But from there, there needs to be this idea of, as Simon mentioned, of gratitude or tipping or some of these things. How do you literally integrate personal tokens and social money into Twitter, Discord, WeChat, things like this. So those are also questions that are open, and I think things people should honestly just build.
That's great. So that's a perfect segue into the next section of this. So now it's going to get interactive. So let's go back to the Figma, and maybe Ian, you can share screen. And so section 1 of the Figma is about inspiration. And so this is a chance for us to not only tell you what we're seeing, which we'll continue to do, but we'd love for you to paste into the Figma either images, links, or even just words and descriptions of anything that you think is worth is relevant here as examples of what's either happening already, what's possible in the future, or just themes like social signaling value that you think is relevant. So income shares is a high level theme, and many of you have probably heard of Spencer Dinwiddie, who is taken his NBA contract and securitized it with an income sharing agreement. And so what's interesting about that is that in and of itself could be an example of a personal token and a trend where you can start to create community around fans and brands. It's akin to the ASMR social media influencer, just a different kind of community. So that's one kind of thing that's happening, and you can start to project out what that will look like in the future. What's the unincorporated man?
Yeah, Dan Elitzer, our colleague, pointed us to this fiction book about a person or persons in the future that are just incorporated. And so it talks about the story of a man that is unincorporated, living in a world where everyone is incorporated, as kind of a adjacent inspiration. These are Bowie bucks. David Bowie issued these quite a long time ago when he wanted to buy the back catalog of his songs. And so fans actually, teamed together with him and bought his Bowie bucks. And that was kind of a revenue share kind of model.
So let's pause there for 1 second. I see some of you pasting things in. We're encouraging you, share your own examples here of anything you think is relevant, whether it's something that's already happening, something that's happened in the past, or even something that is happening in the non-crypto world that you think is relevant and interesting.
Yeah, so put it inside this this white box, like paste an image, take one of the sticky notes and add a URL, take a sticky note and just like type in some words. We're actually gonna capture this and then share it back out afterwards. And so it's helpful if it stays in the box because then we can easily export it. It looks like people are already doing that, which is awesome.
Yeah, so the idea here is like, let's crowdsource our collective brains here of what we think is interesting. So we'll keep sharing what we see and give you a chance to chime in as you add stuff.
How much time?
Let's do this it's 8:30, so let's do this for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much stuff people want to share, and then we can move on to the next section after that.
Cool.
So Bowie bucks, we've got time-based currency. That's just a Wikipedia link. What's interesting here to remember is time banks and barter has been going on forever. And it's been a way for creatives in particular, time banks are, to exchange kind of skills and services with each other pre-crypto. And now I think, what we've heard is there's a lot of new opportunities to take friction out of that process. Who's got the video game?
Oh, this one was also there. This is, a picture of just Fortnight. There's some really interesting kind of social, currency kind of dynamics playing out in the gaming world. Fortnite, around like these skins and other kind of like more cosmetic items and enabling trading between them. But I think if you just kind of squint at it, obviously Fortnite is not a decentralized protocol or anything like that, but you could imagine, scenarios where gaming world starts to actually become more open and people issue, or even games, or even like certain narratives within games start to issue social currencies. And there are some teams working on that.
That's cool. So the next, along that line of theme of community ownership, FC Barcelona, which is one of the most famous and popular soccer or football clubs in the world, is actually community run. So it's an example, again, outside of the crypto world, but something that you could imagine crypto and tokens helping to facilitate. It's fan owned, and this is not the only one. It's just one of the most prominent teams that's owned by its fans. The Green Bay Packers in US football are also kind of fan owned. So it's an interesting example, again, of something that's at a massive scale and massive engagement that's owned by a community. We've got a lot of great links here. Let's start to check out some of these. We've got Dogecoin. I'm guessing that was Simon. ERC20 donuts.
Donuts are really cool.
Can somebody speak to that?
Yeah, can someone talk about donuts on the panel?
Oh, yeah, that was me. There was, this is just an example of, the ETH trader donuts, basically subreddit where the contributions and likes and upvotes and everything were actually being able to be recognized. So basically the idea that having this community where different value is contributed and that value is recognized in some kind of more tangible form, not just Reddit Gold or whatever, then donuts actually became traded in an ERC20 form after being kind of awarded to people on this subreddit. So kind of an emergent and pretty hacky way to create a community currency.
Cool. What about microverse?
Is there someone raising their hand or something?
Yeah, you can use Zoom to raise your hand and share what you've got.
Yeah, if anyone wants to raise their hand, we can open you up to say something about whatever you shared. You'll have to use the Zoom to do so.
Yeah, here's where the experiment comes into play. Looks like Dana's sharing, I can't see exactly what that is, but it looks like virtual goods. Oh, is that Decentraland?
Someone raise their hand, Joe.
Oh. Harith. How do we enable?
You have to go to, actually, wait a minute. I
think you've got it because you're screen sharing.
Yeah. 1 second, folks. Harith, do you want to chat? I think you now have the ability to speak. It's kind of awkward to say.
Can you hear me well on your side?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm driving, so I'm going to keep it very short. So I run a meetup group in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, called Ethereum Malaysia. And one of the things that we've been exploring to do is community-based projects. So they're open sourced. So we do sort of, say, smart contract-based projects. And from there, if it can be evolved into a real sort of company product, then one of the community members can take it out and make it into a company with the idea that when they're successful, they can sort of like give back to the community. So there's kind of a community built project and exit, if that makes sense.
Cool.
Great, thank you for sharing
Thank you.
Maybe one or two more, and then we can move into the next section.
Yeah, let's go with Dana Martins.
CoLab alumni.
Hey friends.
Hello.
Hello.
So I had a couple of things in here. The first is that I just sort of noticed that Reddit is starting to go to Reddit coins, which I think is a really natural progression, given some stuff like the bat tipping and other stuff that's coming in onto these threads. And I've seen a couple of other little examples of sort of that social tipping. And so I saw this is I don't think this is blockchain yet, but when I saw this, I thought that was very interesting that they're sort of like playing with their own coin. Also, I've seen some stuff going on with makers and looking at some different sorts of like NFTs. I had gotten into Decentraland. Actually, when I was in CoLab, I participated in their ICO, and I think they probably remember me having a nervous breakdown when the contract was stalling because I had like collected people's money and was like, we're going to buy all the land. But they're actually trading NFTs names, right? You actually have a passport and an ID, and you can own different names on different wallets and also parcels of land. And it's all also trading on OpenSea. They also allow you to bring in your other collectibles into your like 3D scenes. So you can like have a picture of a crypto kitty that you might own or some other things if it's synced in. So they've only launched for 5 days, but already it's been really interesting to see how that's sort of been integrated in. And people are using all sorts of different currencies to purchase and trade into this pool.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Data. Maybe last one with Arif.
Arif, you can now.
You're live.
Hear you.
Great, thank you. I've just pasted a video of us using deepfake technology to swap a face onto another face. The example you'll see is CZ from Binance, where we swapped his face into a martial arts flick and he's doing some cool things. I think what is quite interesting to us is to test out the idea that composable media is also a huge trend where people's faces and voices are becoming composable. That means you can cut, copy, paste them. And I think tokenizing that and bringing personal tokens to that might be quite interesting. So I've just pasted this in the Zoom chat. Had a little bit of trouble pasting it in the Figma diagram. Still figuring it out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so please keep adding things to the Figma. We're gonna share this with the whole group. So again, and we'll leave this up beyond this 1 hour. So if you've got cool examples that you want to share, contribute to the community. I think, you know, we're building shared mind here, and this is going to be a great asset for everyone. So the next activity that we're going to do is an actual brainstorm. So now that we've kind of heard of lots of inspiring examples and interesting use cases here, we want to think through what are some future use cases together. And so, Ian, do you want to share the kind of template that you've created?
Yeah, so you'll see that we've opened up a new section down below, Activity 2 Future Use Cases. And in a second, I'm going to open up another section to the right, which are a bunch of idea templates. And I'm gonna ungroup this. Okay, so here is what is going to happen. So over to the right of the area where you're gonna put your stuff, you'll see these idea templates over here. And you just take one of them, or if you really wanna get wild, two. And each of them have like a little kind of, basically fill in the blank. So in the future, user X, which you should fill in, will use social tokens to do something, goal, by exchanging X for Y. And if you want as well, you can add your email or Twitter handle. If it's a pretty interesting thing, we may actually follow up with you after this meeting to learn a little bit more. And so the idea here is just for a few minutes, take one of these and fill it in. And one of the pieces of guidance I'm sure Joe will share in a second is the more specific, the better. Like no matter how wild it is or like crazy it is, doesn't matter. This is really kind of about just creating inspiration, creating new ideas, etc. But be as specific as possible. So when you define a user, like kind of define who that is and tell us about like who it is and what their motivations are.
Yeah.
Joe, do you want to?
So we'll kind of follow the same format of drop those into the square to the left. And if you're willing to share, you can raise your hand. If you're willing for us to tweet it out, we'll select a few of these and tweet them out from our account and tag you. So put your Twitter account, or if you want to chat more, and you can label with your email. While we do this, maybe with our panelists, we can demonstrate one. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Bradley, and we're gonna do this together. What's a user that you think is really interesting for a future use case? So we've talked about social media influencers. What's maybe another one that you've seen on the Roll platform?
Oh, so streamers. So we have around 25 streamers on Roll. The very first streamer was just someone who was streaming breeding for CryptoKitties. We just minted oats with Olton. So Olton's a Fortnight streamer who does fashion shows with skins. So basically, you can walk on his runway, and people get involved. And right now, the top skins and swords, like they're getting thousands of oats, and he calls it drip or drown, and it's this huge thing, and it's basically impossible to be a large Fortnite streamer now. So you need to come up with crazy stuff to kind of make your name. And Olton is doing things like this.
So let's try to complete this statement. So in the future, Fortnite streamers will use social tokens too. What's the kind of goal that he has?
Yeah, so Olton wants to become one of the top Fortnite streamers in the world.
To grow their audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think use is very interesting because use can be replaced with some specific behavior that you can do. Whether will oats be staked to gain certain behavior from Alton or from another member of the community. Maybe it unlocks sort of a new skin if oats is staked for a year or 2 years.
So maybe just to use that specific example, like by exchanging personal token for skin.
Yeah,
is it staking?
Virtual skin.
Staking personal tokens? Like this?
Yeah.
For skins?
Yeah.
Or and it's like a certain type of skin, right? It's like limited edition or something?
Yeah, so he's recreating New York Fashion Week in Fortnite, with skins and with his own currency.
Wow. And so let's tag that with Bradley's Twitter.
I'm gonna have to go into Fortnite now. That is really crazy. Do you want to ask Simon or?
Yeah, well, let's zoom out and see. Hopefully that's a good example of what we're trying to do. I see a bunch in there, which is awesome. So raise your hand. Looks like Dana's raised her hand.
Do you want to do Simon and Ruben?
Oh yeah, yes. Simon or Ruben, do you want to try one?
I have one, yeah. I have one. So, I for a long time, I also, because I'm a musician as myself as a hobbyist, and I've worked in Ujo music, so I was thinking a lot about a music use case. And mine is, in the future, a musician will use social tokens to kickstart their career by receiving money for future gig tickets. So the social token acts also as a future gig ticket.
That's great.
By exchanging what?
Oh, I have a ticket already. It's like top left.
Oh, great, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a good one. How about Ruben?
Sorry, I got distracted answering some of the questions on Twitter. There's some interesting
conversations
going on.
Thank you for doing that.
I'll
You're
work on this in
helping
a
manage
sec.
the circus.
I wanted to call out one cool thing that's just happened on this call. With Ross Campbell, who's on this call, he tweeted out a reply to the thread that we're all on, this Twitter thread, talking about some of the implications of what happens when someone dies and their personal token is out there, which is super interesting. But then what he did was he summoned a meme whose personal token entitles you to have a meme like your tweet. If you look through the feed there. So what Ross did was, there it is. He's redeemed one of Amin's tokens to have Amin like that tweet, and it's done. So this is a super interesting example of other output that's valuable that can be captured in a personal token.
Nice. Okay. Wow. Personal tokens in real time. That's next level.
Yeah, that's success for this experiment.
That is really funny.
Cool. So it looks like we've got a bunch of contributions from the group. If you want to, please keep adding them. If anyone wants to raise their hand and share their example, we'd love to hear from you. Or we can just read some of them since they follow the template.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that one's in.
All right, so Dana's got one. In the future, designers and makers will use social tokens to turn digital designs into physical goods by exchanging digital designs for manufacturing expertise and local production. That's cool.
Hmm.
How about no good tweets? In the future, gamers will use social tokens to signal interest in games by exchanging tokens for rev share.
Hmm.
That's cool.
We're actually already seeing this with a bunch of startups that are starting to tokenize and DAOify esports teams. So there's kind of some precedent there. I mean, in some ways, the NBA thing with Spencer is kind of like another level of that. But yeah, that's absolutely a thing. Okay, there's
So that's
Simon's. Bradley's is there. There's another one here.
In the future, TikTok stars will use social tokens to give their fans a share in their 15 minutes of fame by exchanging tokens for rev share. So same kind of an analog, different user, the TikTok stars, but same kind of pattern there around.
Seen that, Bradley, or anything like that?
Yeah, TikTok's interesting. We haven't dived in too much, but yeah, I think that's a really awesome use case.
Katie, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I'm curious if the panel can speak to just social, like how, I know in some of the blog posts and writing that you all have done, we've talked about how social tokens and personal tokens can eat away at social media's business model. Can we speak to that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I think we consider social tokens at scale the unbundling of social capital across the web at large. And I think what makes that possible uniquely is some of the tools that we have, the DeFi stack that's being built, so you can integrate financial markets into that as well. I think over time, and Chris Dixon did some writing about this as well, just this idea that over time, platforms end up competing with their users and sort of taking away a lot of their privileges. And if we're all correct, in the next 10 years, you'll see this downward trend from the most influential people on Instagram or TikTok eventually leaving those platforms because of their business model and literally inventing their own business model with their own money that has its own value, that's completely independent of platforms. And I'm pretty sure that's a trend we'll see because it's sort of the economics of it makes sense.
Yeah,
it's just getting the right products behind that vision.
Right. It's cool. It looks like we've got some clustering happen. Thank you.
We've got one person, Katie Johnson, who wants to share. Katie, you're up.
You're live.
Hey guys, if you can hear me, the one I'm most excited about is actually over in the upper left. I have a real passion around kind of redefining education, in that, in the future, people are going to be able to teach each other things that are provable. And I haven't moved it down to the education one yet. It's over in the upper left. It's all by itself. So in the future, educational institutions will use social tokens to endorse learners by exchanging micro diplomas for provable deliverables. And by educational institutions, I mean thought leaders. Because I think that it's a huge opportunity for us to redefine education going forward.
So by that, like just to extend that, do you mean like a really famous, well-known thought leader or professor would actually like issue a social token to someone who took a course with them, and then that would almost serve as like maybe in the future as good as a degree from a university?
That's my hope. I think that it's the future of learning, is learning from each other and using that as the deep network that we already have and already functions right now, but in a way that's actually provable and permanent. I think
that's
it'd be
really cool.
Yeah.
It's like
co-signing on somebody, right? Like,
yeah.
It almost makes you think
exactly.
of like people, even in the work world, that you've been mentored by, and like how valuable that is, but how unseen that is unless you talk to them,
Yeah, I mean, this takes LinkedIn endorsements to a whole new level, right? Where you actually have to deliver something and someone has to put their name on it.
yeah, that's cool. Another kind of analog to that exists in the science world is when you write papers, right? Like the lab head's name is on the paper and they're kind of co-signing your paper. There's some like weirdness that comes with that, but that's pretty interesting.
So it looks like there's a bunch of, I think Tara on our team has been in the background starting to synthesize, which is awesome. Thank you, Tara. Tara, do you want to share some of the patterns that you're starting to see here across? We just enabled you to speak if you're able to.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool to see everyone sort of jumping in and starting to cluster too. But I think we're seeing a lot of, sort of interesting things surfaced around, media and entertainment that we talked about, great stuff around education. There are some thoughts about work. So, exchanging social tokens tokens for time and services for different projects, which is pretty cool. Some financial use cases as well. And some really cool things around sort of community and cooperatives.
Nice.
Carlos is asking for the Figma file link. So it's tinyurl.com/personal tokens.
Yep. So
should we talk? The cooperative thing hasn't come up much in this discussion. Do we want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Does someone want to raise their hand and share what they're thinking?
Like Katie again. I don't know if this is.
Whoops, sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
No worries. Anyone want to share?
I have some ideas around cooperatives. I think one of the reasons why personal tokens are exciting is because it feels like equity or like the ability to capitalize some form of liquidity, whereas cooperatives mainly function on like one person, one vote as a membership kind of thinking. So it's, for me, it's just been hard to marry the two concepts together, merely because in social tokens, there is this idea that there's like a lot of liquid amount of tokens floating around and exchanging and so forth, which is feels like the opposite to a cooperative, which is one member or one vote kind of thinking. But there's definitely a lot of value in thinking about how we build things as a community, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really fascinated by, he passed away recently, but some books by Bernard Leiter, the co-creator of the Euro, and wrote a lot about the history of community currencies. And a lot of his thinking is around cooperative use cases. So where has the dollar failed, and where can sort of another medium of exchange help? And one thing he's really fascinated by is the concept of a learning currency. So you could imagine sort of in sort of like lower served communities, it may be profitable to do more negative behavior than do other things. Can you create a medium of exchange that is almost a form of apprenticeship or based on scholarship? So it's sort of given down from someone that has a knowledge base, and to earn it, you need to complete a certain amount of tasks, and that can be redeemed for, let's say, credits at a school. So all of a sudden, you're creating, you're putting folks in sort of situations that they wouldn't have otherwise been in, a very positive instance, literally through a new form of currency. And those are some ideas that are pretty fascinating. I'd love to see sort of a learning social token in existence that makes sense, and maybe institutions.
Can you repeat who the author that you were?
Yeah, I forgot the name of the book, but you'll find him online. It's Bernard Leiter is his name. Yeah.
That's a really cool example.
I think we have a couple minutes left. Maybe like Simon, Ruben, Bradley, like anything you see here that you just want to comment on that you think is interesting?
I think I want to touch upon something that Arnold mentioned back in the chat, like when we started this conversation, which is, I think he said like the premise that in essence, we have not created any new behaviors, simply platform at scale, latent ones, which I think is still an interesting way to think about social tokens, in that now when we might look at them, we might still think of ways in which it might marginally improve existing things. Like, okay, instead of just selling your time directly into the market, you have a token which is valued by the market in order to sell. It feels like a marginal improvement. But at scale, it looks completely different. And a good example that I have from the web is the concept of a like, right? Before the web, right? If we wanted to say to someone or tell someone, just it's a message of approval, that's the information, just as a message of approval. How did you send it, right? Like it was absurd to think like you would, take a picture of the thumbs up, put it in a letter and mail it to someone across half the world just to say like approval, I like the content, right? But with the web, something as simple as a like, which is like a 1-bit information being sent anywhere in the world, became possible. And so now you have at scale something like Instagram or Twitter, which thrives on a concept of a like or an upvote. So it's not that these things weren't possible before, but what happens when these things happen at scale? I think that's still like an interesting question to ask, or something to like leave with this kind of conversation is, yes, it might look like a marginal improvement, but what does it look like at scale?
Yeah, I think in fact, the fact that it's happened, those behaviors exist is positive, right? Like the new technologies are just tools to enable less frictional and more scaled ways to exhibit those behaviors, right? And so if it's fundamental to humanity to have those behaviors, then you're just solving, like that's something that you can bank on no matter what the technology is, which is cool. Ruben, do you want to share any kind of reactions or final thoughts?
Yeah, just piggybacking on that, I think that's an awesome point, because that's what's going to enable like the next stage of emergent behavior on top of that. So when we have this like graph of likes and social tokens and gratitude, then you can build reputation systems based on you know, who has, this is something Simon's been thinking about for a while in his latest blog post. And the idea is basically, you know, having that graph of who's liked whose content and who's given gratitude or kudos. That actually shows that the person that's received that gratitude has done something of value, or at least something valuable to the sender of that token. Over time, you kind of create that and look at the different types of kudos. Maybe someone's got kudos for reviewing a blog post, or maybe for reviewing some code, or auditing a contract, or like whatever kind of behavior it is. It doesn't have to have economic value, it just has to have some value to the person who's received it. And then over time, we can kind of marry up those different expressions of gratitude in a way that shows, oh, wow, this person's actually done a bunch of work, or created a bunch of value, and therefore they have some expertise or skills. So coming back to my early point of how do we make sure this is inclusive for everyone? This might be a way to do that. Someone who is anonymous or pseudonymous, doesn't have a big profile, but has something of value to contribute, can quickly kind of realize that by the gratitude of others.
That's really cool. I want this conversation to continue. There's so much more to talk about, but we're at the hour, so I want to respect everyone's time. So first of all, thank you to Bradley, Ruben, and Simon for bringing your expertise and brilliant thinking to the group. It's super inspiring. And thank you to everyone who's participated. We want to continue this conversation. So there's a few things. One, we're going to leave this Figma open. So if you want to continue to add to it, please do. Two, we'll package it up and share it with all of you. I think you registered for this this event, so we have your email. The other thing we're going to share out is a survey. As I mentioned, this is an experiment. We did not break Figma, so we might want to give Figma kudos and some social gratitude for that. But we're going to ask you for feedback. This is an experiment. We'd love to learn about this format, this topic, and ways we can engage with this community in better ways. And also specifically, how do we keep this conversation going? So you can follow us on Twitter. You can sign up for our mailing list. If you have an idea, if you're starting a company, we'd love to help you with that. So please reach out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be in touch.
Great. Couple quick things. I'll likely shut down the Figma just for like a few minutes and then reopen it. So don't get worried about that. And then also the Twitter stream is still going. So the conversation's still going. Ruben and others, please jump in and answer people's questions that weren't answered on today's session.
All right. What a great way to head into the weekend. Thank you all. This was so cool.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Have fun, Simon, tonight. Thanks for joining at such a late hour.
No worries. Thanks. This is great.
Right. Bye, everyone.
You guys didn't break Figma.
We did not. I'm pleasant.